Hey everybody, it's Khara CrossFit Brindle. Welcome back to the channel. A familiar face, Ashley is back with us. Hi Ashley,
Hello.
it's good to have you back. So
Thank
today we
you.
have an agenda item of referrals. We were noticing at the time of this recording that referrals are kind of low, that we have kind of a slump happening specifically here in Colorado. We wanted to talk to our colleagues about what that could look like, why that could be happening, and some strategies to how to make that better. So do you want to start by sharing a little bit who you are for people who haven't seen you on the channel before, and then we'll dive in?
Yeah, I'm Ashley. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, addiction counselor, and an approved clinical supervisor. I own a private practice and I see kind of both sides of trauma. So I see court mandated offenders and I see victims of violence. And I've had a private practice since 2016. I put it down for a little bit and then I really picked it up a couple years ago. So I'm full-time private practice owner now. Mhm.
Yeah, so I imagine from your roles of supervisor as well as clinician yourself that this idea of like the referrals and what's going on here, we can put on
Mhm.
our thinking hats and say, here are some ideas.
For
So let's
sure.
start with why do you think this is happening? Like I know you've been talking to colleagues about this in our community. What do you want viewers to know?
So I've been reflecting on this a lot. And when I started my private practice in 2016, a lot of the insurance panels were closed. I couldn't get on to Blue Cross Blue Shield. I couldn't get on to Cigna or Aetna. And then within the last few years, those panels really changed to allowing kind of this open enrollment or accepting providers on a rolling basis. And so we've seen a real shift in who is credentialed and how many people are credentialed. And I think on top of that, which I'm sure you can speak to with your Medicaid expertise, is supervisory billing and
Mhm.
allowing pre-licensed folks to now see insurance clients, including Medicaid and even interns. And so when you have private practice owners kind of in mass, all of a sudden shifting to a group practice model with people underneath them, now you're having to fill multiple caseloads with
Mhm.
the same contracts, and I'm sure there's a shift in supply demand. And that's not to say people don't need help because they do. There's a lot of people who need help. There's still wait lists out there. But that's just my perspective. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm hearing similar things. A lot of the colleagues that have shared, hey, we're seeing a slump. It seems really slow. They're talking about these first 2 months of the year, right? So we're filming in March. The first 2 months are over, but like there was like this lull that we expected early January. But usually by mid-January, in my experience over the last 10 years, we see the uptick again of like people are recovering from the holidays. They're like, oh my gosh, that was stressful. I saw my family, whatever it is. Now I want to go back into therapy or even
Right.
just clarifying that their benefits cover therapy is part of that process for the first 2 weeks. So I expected to see more of an uptick in January, but we heard from colleagues that wasn't true. As
Right.
now a solo practice owner, that's not my experience, but I've also niched down pretty specifically where it doesn't look like an open door for a lot of different kinds of clients. And so people are saying, hey, I can't fill my interns. I can't give them the hours they need for school,
Yeah.
which is problematic and super stressful. And I just feel for those group practice owners because they're like, I committed to this intern. I want to help them grow and develop, but I can't
Right.
get them clients in the door.
Mhm.
So I think on the professional side, what you're saying is the pool has gotten broader. There's more people in the pool when it comes to providers available to take insurances or private pay. And so maybe that is part of the equation, more people.
And maybe inflation too. I mean, sometimes mental health is the first thing people cut out when they
Yeah.
have high deductible plans or copay or have to do the private pay option. And we're seeing things just getting more and more expensive, especially in Colorado here. So maybe that's a part of it too.
Yeah. I also think of seasonal changes. So a lot of people are kind of in that hibernation mode for January,
Yeah,
February. It's cold, it's dark, it's
mhm.
a little more gloomy. Here in
That's a
Colorado, we still get
great
sunshine, so that helps a lot.
point.
But I think we see a natural upswing of like stuff happening in March, right? So, like, as a suicide assessment trainer, I'm always like, March to May actually is the most stressful time for us as
Mm,
clinicians because we see an uptick from depression to a little bit
mhm,
more baseline, or we see bipolar moving from depression to baseline.
mhm.
So I think that's something we also can name is that maybe we're about to see more people asking for
Yeah,
support in these next two
mhm,
months
right.
than the first two.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. So for viewers who are watching, are like, yep, that's my story. What do you think they need to know about strategies to make this better? I mean, like we're naming there's a problem, people are feeling it. What would you tell those owners?
So I think the first thing to consider is so many therapists have an overlap in what they offer. So thinking about how to market themselves to specific clients or what we call their target market. Said another way, how do you get clients you want to see in the door? Maybe asking yourself who your ideal client is, what services I offer, and then kind of like what you just said, really narrowing that down.
Mm.
So for example, trauma. Okay, how many of us see trauma? How many of us are trauma
Everyone.
trained? Exactly. And that's my point. And so, what does that look like? How can you help a client? What makes you stand out from the dozens or hundreds of other trauma therapists in your area? What kind of trauma do you specialize in? How do you define and conceptualize trauma? And the same can be said, right, for depression, anxiety, OCD, personality disorders. But that would be my first suggestion is really narrowing down what is it that you do and how do you translate that into your website or an elevator speech?
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I do individual consultations with therapist colleagues about this and their brand, like I emphasize we are the brand, right? So like
Mhm.
what we say, who we work with needs to be very clear. And so from your suggestion just now, it's like, how do I create like ideal client profiles? You might have two or
Mhm.
three of like, I like to work with a trauma client that looks like XYZ, and then this one who is working on OCD stuff, and then here's someone with anxiety, right? But like having a clear picture of who those people are in generalization,
Mhm.
but then what language would they speak? How do we make that into copy on a website so they feel like when they read it, we're talking to them? They're like, you're
Mhm.
talking to me. I want to work with you. So I think there
Exactly.
is a formula here of like narrow down ideal populations, how what are the issues they have, what are the challenges they have, and then speak to those challenges in website
Mhm.
copy or in an elevator pitch. I
Yeah,
love that.
for sure. And
Awesome.
I think the next step is considering who's referring clients to you. A lot of us have websites, Psychology Today profiles, friends from graduate school who are in the field, or we built some sort of professional network. But who else is actually referring clients to you? Are clients finding you directly through word of mouth, through other professionals? And I encourage therapists to think about gaining knowledge about the system in which they work and live in and community resources and using that knowledge to make connections with potential referral sources. And remembering your clients are seeing other professionals, right? Like doctors, lawyers, acupuncturists, mentors, sponsors, massage therapists, teachers, caseworkers, hospital staff, even other therapists, right? And we need to build relationships with all of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And it can seem kind of daunting, but building a successful long-term practice does take a lot of effort and networking beyond a website or a Google search.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, I think even I can only speak to our Colorado community because that's the only place I've been
Right,
this
me too.
professional.
Mhm.
But I think something I've told people over the years is like, you got to build relationships. It's not just,
Mhm.
hey, I'm going to go up on a social media therapist page and say I can take clients now. Like
Mhm.
that's not going to work unless it's
Right.
very specific of like I work with LGBTQ plus that have experienced homelessness by coming out to their families. Now they're no longer in their home, right? Like that seems very specific. Or
Mhm.
like a DBT group, which is always in vogue. Like we're always
Mhm.
looking for
Yeah.
those groups. But everything else, I feel like the people who put that out there, it's like follow up with like, how do I build a relationship with this person? How do I connect and say, how can I make this mutually beneficial for both of us? That
Right.
it's not just blasting the Facebook groups for therapists or saying, hey, I need help. It's like build that connection and then the referrals come a little bit easier. I agree. I think that's how I would do it. And that's how I did do it for a long time as a group practice owner.
And I think beyond that, looking at where else clients go, school, work, coffee shops, wellness centers, gyms. So, can you
Mm-hmm.
start building relationships with those businesses? So, looking at the professional piece, like we just discussed, but where else are these clients going and what other activities are they engaging in? And reaching out to other business owners or leaders in other areas that you might not have thought about.
Mm-hmm.
I just had this conversation with a prior supervisee. There's a major nonprofit looking for a group facilitator a couple times a week. And I suggested, hey, apply because if you get in the door and you run a group for 6 months, then all of a sudden you have that huge organization as a referral source for years. And
Right.
so recognizing if you can branch out a little bit and provide another service, and get paid for it, don't do anything for free at this point in your career, but that's going to pay off too in the long run. And the last thing I think is important to mention is if you get a referral for a client that's not a good fit for you, how do you find the best fit for that client? Because when you refer out, that professional is going to turn around in a month or 6 months or a year and refer back to you. And they're going to tell
Mm,
their network, like, hey, I got this awesome client from this person, potentially they've never met before.
right.
And they seem great. I got coffee with them. I love their modalities. We have some overlap, but not enough to where we can cross refer. And I think those
Mm,
relationships are really important to consider too. And not wanting to hang on to clients that we might not be the best fit for, because it could pay off in the end.
yeah. And I think for our viewers who identify as people pleasers, which I have a little bit of, it's
Yeah.
always nice to be able to say, no, I'm not a fit. And here are some people who are. Like, I
Mhm.
love that. That makes me feel so much better about the no.
Mhm.
Is to say I have an option or I have three options is my magic number, three options for them to consider. So yeah, like there's so many reasons to network and build relationships and connect with other communities in your area. To your point about like external community members and organizations outside of mental health, like a lot of the HOAs and cities and
Mhm.
towns have directories of their own, and they're always calling us
Yeah.
up saying like, "Hey, we want to know who the therapist is in the area. Can we
Mhm.
like know your specialties? Can we put you on the directory? Can we put you on our website?" There's lots of like little marketing strategies there for like the area where your office is located or a space that you want to serve that
Mhm.
way.
And I think
Yeah.
there's funding sources to consider outside of insurance, a managed care organization or a nonprofit that serves a specific population,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe there's a small business that can cover mental health, you know, themselves rather than going through insurance. And so I think getting creative and educating yourself on where are other contracts available,
Mm-hmm.
um, just to branch out of that insurance kind of focus.
Yeah, so important. I appreciate this. So yeah, hopefully our viewers are feeling motivated, like they have some direction of where they could, have this slump get better at this point
Mhm.
and get more referrals in the door. Any final thoughts for viewers on this video?
I think my last thought is, are you willing to think outside the box even more and stretch yourself outside of individual therapy? Do evaluations or court ordered treatment, DHS cases, higher acuity clients, because those are people who are always in high demand. And so I know it can be a little uncomfortable to shift from I do once a week outpatient trauma work to something a little bit more involved in terms of case management or safety planning or risk assessment. And if that's where the demand is, are you willing to consider something a little different, at least one
Mm-hmm.
client or two clients, as
Yeah.
you kind of continue to build your preferred part of your practice?
Well, and of course, I love this advice because as someone who's a consultant on secondary income streams, I'm like, yeah, like try some things on, see what you like, build some things
Yeah.
up. Like this is very in alignment with what I talk to people about one-on-one and consultation. Of like there is something to be said about diverse income streams, preventing
Right.
burnout and allowing creativity. So I love this suggestion at the end of our video to be like, hey, possibilities here.
Mhm.
Don't put yourself in one little box unless it's
Yeah.
I serve a certain population.
Mhm.
Awesome, Ashley. I appreciate your wisdom, your thoughts on this. I could tell you put a lot of thought into it, and that's been showing up in your community. Where can people find you if they have questions for you about this?
Online. I know we just talked about how having a website isn't enough, but my practice is called Enso Counseling, and I can easily be found online. I love these conversations, even just a 10 or 15-minute phone call or Zoom call. I learn a lot from
Mhm.
everyone who reaches out. And remembering the more relationships you build and the more referral sources you have, the more client inquiries you're going to have. So
Mhm.
some of this is a numbers game, and being open to connect with someone you don't know, even if
Mhm.
it's another professional who might intimidate you. Like when I first met you, I was intimidated by you,
Oh
and here
no.
we
Well, folks, now that's on a video. I'm not taking that out.
are.
No, I mean, so many of us, and this is still my heart too, of like, if you serve a similar population or you take Medicaid or anything that would have opened that door, which I think is how we connected was Medicaid. I'm sorry that that was your first experience, but I'm so glad that we've gotten to know each other better, that it was past the intimidation. Oh, I hear that a lot. I hear all sorts of things. I'm like, oh, you're famous. I'm like, no, no, that's not this. But yes, let's build networks. Let's build community. Let's talk to each other. The 15-minute call, quick email. Hey, I want to talk to you about cross referring. Hey, tell me about what you do. There is still value in that. So viewers, I hope you'll take that and run with it. I will put Ashley's contact info below the video if you want to reach out to her. And Ashley, thanks again for your time today.
Yeah. Bye.
See you next time, everyone. Stay tuned for more videos. We'll see you then.